that you can download and get a trial. So we close it out and hopefully we can still get it. So you can download this. You get 30 days for free. This is Crazy Bump. Pretty cool program. It's been around for quite some time. We still use it at work. People use it. And I think it does a pretty good job for what it does. You can probably get an educational version for $30-35. I think probably $56, $75 you can get a commercial version. If it's something you're interested in. Okay. And I've used this for quite a long time. I now use other software that do similar things. They're just significantly more powerful. But for the bang for the buck and a free trial, this is a pretty good deal. And it'll probably do everything that we want it to do. It's just giving it the right information to be able to get what we want. So yesterday we worked on something that looked like this. I think this was about where we were at, right? And here we have, I'm going to increase some of these so you can see them a little bit better on the projector. So here I put all these, I put some scratches in. So I'm going to make these significantly more visible than what they are. And so I've created this cool diffuse, but now I want to go in and I want to get a normal map, and I also want to be able to create a specular map that I can build my home materials that have a convincing, texture that's metal, but also reads as wood in other places. Okay, so I know that my specular maps are on the wood is probably going to look different, and my gloss map on the wood than it does on the metal, and vice versa. So I need my metal to be a little bit more hot, a brighter spec, and disperse more. I probably, depending on what type of wood, if this is shellac, I probably want a tighter specular, but not as hot. So I need to play with some things. If I just take this picture or image, let's call it an image, into Crazy Bump right now, it's not going to do the job. Okay. So what Crazy Bump's going to do is it's going to basically convert this into a black and white image. Okay, and it's going to read value, the value of anything that's completely black to completely white, and everything in between. And it's going to take those values and it's going to read it as essentially a height map and say, okay, well the lightest areas are going to stick up, and the darkest areas are going to recess. And from there, it's going to create a normal map, give you an inclusion map, and a specular map, etc. So if I just take this thing in here raw and don't change anything, I'm going to get all these crazy grooves and bumps on these scratches, and I probably don't want that on my normal map for the metal part, right? I want to have these, I will make these much more subtle on mine. I just obviously ramp these up so you can see them on the projector, but I probably don't need it to actually have a groove for a scratch on a piece of metal. So if you've ever seen a nice hard piece of metal plate, you can see scratches, and it's like scratches as the light hits it in the specular, but if you go really close, there's not, it still looks and feels completely flat, right? So I either need to dial these way back, or maybe I'm just going to turn these completely off for what I'm going to tell Crazy Bump. Okay. I also want to add a little bit of a lip in between the transition of this metal and the wood, and I've kind of done that already, but I'm just going to go ahead and show you how I created this. So what I did is I just created a new layer and did Control hyphen to bring up my grid, and I just pulled out a perfect sphere from the center using Shift and Alt, and I'm going to give myself a new layer, and I want this to exist above my folder, so I'm going to put it up here. and I'm going to go and paint bucket that, and I'm going to hold Alt. If you hold Alt on a layer and pull up, you'll see that I have two pointers or mouse pointers, and so now I have a duplicate of that. Control I will give me the inverse, and then I'm just going to hold Shift and dragging from the corner with Alt, and you'll see that I'm shrinking this in uniformly on all sides of the center. So I just wanted to get an idea on where this circle is. I can now select this one with my my wand tool. Wand tool's W, so I'm just going to select this inner one, hide this layer, and click on this layer to delete. So now I have just like a nice little lip on here. I don't need that anymore. So it's just, I mean, there's probably like 5 different ways on how you could create this. You could use like somewhere in here they have to find it again, like a shape tool. You could use like a shape tool to probably create this too. So I have this. If I do Control I, I'll get the inverse. I think I want this to be raised up a little bit, and I'm going to go Adjustments, Levels, and if I just drag this down, I'm going to get something a little bit more, subtle. Okay, I just want it to be raised up just a tad, and I'm going to we're not going to blur it. We're just going to leave it like that. So it's a little bit higher than this. Okay, so I just gave it a little bit of a lip. I know it's a brighter color, or greater value than the base of this, so I can expect how Crazy Bump's going to read this. It should give me a little bit of a lip or bevel to make it look like the wood is inset below. Make sense? Say I wanted to really sell that and darken the wood, I could go in here and create a new layer. I'm just going to go ahead and fill that, and I'm going to hit Darken and dial this all back so I can really sell that this thing sets down a little bit on that. Maybe something like that. And let me go ahead and get the file. So usually you'd flatten these all out or something, but there's kind of a cool way. If you hit Control A, you'll select everything, or just select the whole space, and instead of doing Control C, which just copies one layer, if you do Control Shift C, it copies all visible. Control B, now I have it up here. You can see that I've copied all layers. Okay, and that allows me to hide that, get rid of it when I'm done. I'm going to go ahead and save as, and I'm going to save this as a target, and I'm just going to call this Crazy Test 2. Okay, and I'm going to save this as a 24-bit. If you need an alpha channel in your target, it has to be 32-bit. So alpha channels is typically in your diffuse, is where you put in its opacity. So if there's translucent or transparent parts, or just parts that are you don't want it, you want completely masked out, that's where you put that image, is in the alpha channel of your diffuse. The gloss map typically belongs in the alpha channel of your specular map. Okay, so now I'm going to come to Crazy Bump, and I'm going to hit Open, and essentially we have a file, so I'm going to click here, and I'm going to find that file. And we have this right here. So I'm just going to click on it, and it's going to give me two options. And it's just, one is just the inverted of the other. The right one is, by default, light is poking out, dark is going recessed. The one on the left is essentially the opposite. So typically I'm going to start with the right. And this is what it looks like. It looks like the dude from BioShock. But you can change this. Probably something a little bit better representation is a box for this. And I can just sit here and left click, I can rotate. Middle mouse roll is to zoom in. Right is to, if you hold the right mouse button, you are interactively changing the light position, the position of the light. Okay? So I'm going to come over here and say, okay, well that's a little too crazy, and I'm just going to dial down the overall intensity to about 25. I can slide this and you can see the inverse, etc. So I'm just going to do about 25. Shape recognition on something like this, if I kind of bring this down a little bit, it'll be more of a top-down, type view. So I might just want to see, how much. Maybe I want a little bit more, fine detail, etc. You can just essentially change all these things. Maybe overall I don't want so much large detail, right? Maybe it's getting a little too, so maybe I'm just going to dial that back. So I can get a look at this. Okay. Maybe I'm pretty happy with that. The displacement map is, if you know a displacement map, will actually, you can use those if your engine reads them, will actually change geo. Sometimes I'll, take one of these and kind of mess with it, take it out, and because it usually gives you some cool noise and stuff, right? I might export it out anyways and just overlay it or multiply it on top of my diffuse at like a really, really low percent just to give me some more randomization sometimes, and sometimes it's just completely useless to me. Here's the occlusion map. I can increase the power, I can make it a little tighter if I want, etc. Maybe something like that looks good. And here's the specular map. So we can see that we have some issues in the specular right here. Is our metal on this surface is quite a bit darker than what we would need for the specular, so we would have to kind of change that up. So we could either go back and change that again, or we can just do that in a minute in Photoshop. So I'm going to save all textures, and we're going to save them all as targets. Save them all out. Looks like we're good to go. And let me open. Somebody see where my guys are. We need the occlusion and the spec. So the occlusion, real easy. Let's just grab this occlusion, copy it, and let's take this and up at the top. And usually what I do, if it's something that's pretty realistic, I'll go ahead and I will sharpen this once, just give it a little bit more crisp. Put on the occlusion, and I'm going to run this as a normal, and just get something. You can just see that kind of pops it a little bit, sells a little bit more of depth. And then in here with the specular map, let's go ahead and put these on so we can see the difference here. So with this, I'm going to say File, Save As, and this is wood, metal, and then D for diffuse. We're good, and that's that. And what I'm going to do is, I'm going to make this a Phong, and let's go ahead and put in our color map. And what did I call this one? Is this metal wood diffuse? So we can see it. I'm just going to auto map one face. Oops. There we go. So just pretend like we're creating a floor tile. So you can see that the specular is all blown out, it's uniform across the thing. And now we need a normal map. So let's click the normal. We need to change that to a tangent space. And what did we call our normal? It's just this, I think. And if we want that normal map to show up, we can see that, alright, now it looks like it's reacting to light a little bit. It also looks like our metal is a little wobbly over here where it should be flat. So that means maybe I had some you can assess that, hey, maybe I had some more information in my image that transferred to the normal map that I either need to hide or shouldn't include, right? Information that should just be in the specular, because that metal should feel flat, okay? Everything looks good there. Specular color, let's go ahead and add that. So we did this, and so that still feels the same, that specular. So the last thing I'm going to do is with this, I'm going to come in here on this specular, and I'm going to do a Control-Shift-I, which should give me the inverse, and I'm going to go ahead and brighten this up. Oops, not that. On my levels, and I'm going to go ahead and brighten up that metal. Hit OK, and I'm going to hit Save. And now when I come back into Maya under that specular, if I reload this, you should see that that specular highlight on that metal is probably still not quite right. It might need to be still brighter, but you can see that I'm getting a much more convincing metal highlight there. Again, I would come back and tweak this a little bit. It looks like we have some additional information that came into that normal map that I would want to exclude in the image. So the thing is when you're creating the specular, the base specular, or the normal from your diffuse, it's not like you can. The thing I want you to remember is you can't just take whatever you made your diffuse and just say, all right, take in the crazy bump. Like, you are going to have to adjust things. So if you have scratches that should be showing up in your specular that aren't showing up, maybe we need to bring them in. If I want to bring in some color into my specular, I can do that. I can bring in just a little bit of color. I'd obviously want to kill it off the wood. If I want to bring those scratches in, which belong in the specular, right? And then copy this, bring these in. I'm going to go ahead and invert these, and let's go ahead and save this. Save. So now I've added a little bit of color and a little bit of highlight on those scratches. If I bring that in and reload it as the same, I might need to highlight it a little bit more, but we should start to see a little bit of color coming through. You can see it right there. But to get those scratches to pop, I would need to increase their visibility even probably a little bit more, because I want those to show up when the light hits it to make it look like the metal is scratched. So it's just a little tweaking. Go back, see what it looks like, get something you like. Okay? So we'll continue this tomorrow, and then we'll also go over how to make some of these tileable, and you can knock yourself out over the weekend.
Videos.
It's slow.
Fast.